more people to join, but we should begin thereafter. Hi everyone, I'm Cynthia from the Australian Space Agency's International and National Engagement Team. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. The Adelaide team are currently in the Ghana land and pay our respects to those elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Welcome to the Australian Space Agency's launch of the second of the three-stage $150 million Moon to Mars program. Today we will be going through the recently launched Demonstrator Feasibility Grants program. Just to note, the session today will be recorded and distributed on various digital agency platforms. This session will be approximately 30 minutes, which will be opened shortly by Campbell Pegg, project lead of the Moon to Mars program. In a moment, we will also welcome Frank Gallagher from the team for an explanation of the program itself. We would then like to finish with a couple of questions from the audience today, which can be submitted by accessing slido.com and entering the event code #demonstrator. See the slide for further instructions. Noting that we have around 30 minutes today, if we don't get to your questions, we'll have frequently asked questions document and directions and contact phone number and grant guidelines available at the end of the presentation. I now welcome Campbell Pegg to the virtual stage.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I thought I'd start a little bit today, just a little bit explaining who I am first, and also my colleague Frank, who is who'll be also speaking today. So just a little bit of a background on myself. I started in the European space industry. I started at a company called OHB System, and I was lucky enough to be working on ExoMars 2016, which is presently orbiting Mars. And it's worked a range from, while in Europe, I worked on a range of different satellites, and then up to the last one I worked on was at Airbus on the Orion program, which is a human mission that is going to the moon. And then, of course, I had a bit of a step up and came to the Australian Space Agency. So I very much enjoy my time here and enjoying getting these programs out for the industry. I also have my colleague who's going to be speaking as well today, Frank. We poached him also from the UK Airbus, who was also working on spacecraft, early phase missions, and definitely from the spacecraft development side. So it's good to have a lot of you here today, but it's fantastic to be here and releasing, I would say, the first launch orientated program to getting products into space and getting your services up there. So I have noticed there are a few people still coming on. So what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit through the Moon to Mars initiative, and I think by the end of this, majority of the people will be here. So let's get started onto this. So as you guys know, a lot of you will, is the Moon to Mars initiative is $150 million invested by the federal government into the Australian industry to grow the Australian space industry. It's also there to support NASA's ambitious plans to go back to the moon and onto Mars. So what we've done is actually broken it down into three programs: the supply chain program, the demonstrator program, and also the Trailblazer program. So the supply chain program, I'll talk about this first. This is all about getting Australian products and services into the national and international supply chains. It's broken down into two sub-programs: the capability improvement grants, which are actually open now. You can apply for it. There are grants in the up to $1 million available today. The second intake is actually closing on the 17th of the 12th. It's open continuously until the 2023, but the second intake is going to close soon. So if you are looking to apply for it, I would recommend to start applying quite soon. We also have a facilitation funding that will commence next year. Now I'll skip over the Demonstrator Program and go straight to the Trailblazer Program. So this is an inspirational program that we're going to be sending something to the moon and really show the world what Australia is capable of doing. And it's also there to inspire the nation as well. This will be coming, and you'll be hearing more and more of this throughout the next year and also the year after this, but it'll be coming ultimately in 2022, and we should see launches hopefully in 2025 onwards. Now today we'll be talking about the Demonstrator Program, which I'll go into more details as we go down, but this is all about getting our first notch on, it's really about getting us the space heritage that we need in Australia and really building that experience we have for getting stuff into space. So let's go to the next slide. So the objectives of the Moon to Mars Initiative. So the whole Moon to Mars Initiative is meant to support Australia's ambitions to join NASA's endeavours to go onto the Moon and onto Mars. Is to accelerate the growth of the Australian space industry, build Australian capability and capacity while demonstrating that to the world, lifting Australian involvement in national and international supply chains, and as well inspire the nation. So I see that there is around about 84 online now, so I think we're going to get up to the max level soon, but I'll just go through a little bit of what the rundown of today will be, explaining what will be happening here and there. So the Demonstrator Program, we'll be talking a little bit about the objectives of the program itself, the program structure and timeline, and also the mission grant summary. Then I'll be passing it over to my colleague who will be speaking about the feasibility grant details, examples of eligible activities, grant assessment processes, time frames as well. Then you'll also be explaining a little bit about the further information, where it comes from, and then you'll also have the Q&A at the end. Now, just a reminder for some of the individuals who just came in now, we have Slido, which is open, so slido.com. Please go to slido.com and type in #demonstrator. So, and then you'll be able to see all the questions from the individuals today. And the advantage with this is that you can upvote, so you can actually start putting in there. So just a reminder, slido.com and then #demonstrator. Okay, next slide. So a little bit of rundown of the overall Demonstrator project itself. The key aspect here is to really build Australian capability and really getting these missions working in the space industry and getting that experience. It's one of the fundamental aims of this program. So at the end of it, we aim to see a range of projects, space projects implemented and actually operating in space or connecting with things in space. We want to also see increased investment into the Australian space industry, as well as potentially for the future, being able to support Moon to Mars activities. So any exploration programs that Australia wants to move into, we want to see these missions being linked into this. The next slide, please. So this slide I'll talk about for a little bit because it's quite important to understand why we've done what we've done. So as you can see, a typical space mission is actually broken up into a range of phases. And we've actually designed the grants around these phases to help facilitate individuals along this process. So if you haven't seen this phasing before, if you've never seen it at all, I'd really recommend going online, looking up NASA project life cycles, space project life cycles, or even the European standards, which is the ECSS. Go to space project life cycles and have a look at there, and I'll explain in a lot of detail what you would need to do at each phase. But just as a general rundown, if you haven't heard it before, feasibility grants are all about trying to get you from a concept study all the way up to a feasibility study. And at the end of this, you should really have a good understanding of what, if this project you're doing is actually feasible, what the cost will be, how you're going to be implementing it, what are the finances. You should also be seeing some investors coming along at this point, because really at this point we want to see people saying, hey, this is the cost. Now, we just need some support with the funding of it. Now, after that, the phase C, D, E, and F, this is all about doing the final designs, building it, testing it, putting it into space, and operating in space. And then phase F is about closeout as well. As you can see, a lot of the costs are actually around phase C and F, which is the reason why majority of the money is in that phase. But then, of course, the feasibility grants is there to prepare you for this. Now, the biggest question here that a lot of people ask us is, feasibility grants, do you have to receive a feasibility grant to get a mission grant? The answer is no. So you can just say, look, the feasibility grants, I don't need them. I'm just going to go straight for the mission grants. That's completely fine. You could also apply for a feasibility grant and not apply for a mission grant. That's also fine as well. But I will have a little word of warning here. The mission grants, and I'll go through a little bit of the expectations of them. The mission grants, we have got higher expectations of people to enter a mission grant, which we'll go through on the next slide. So if you are not going to apply for a feasibility grant, that is completely fine, but I'd highly recommend you start working now to get to the mission grant. So it would take easily about a year or 9 months to get your feasibility up and running. So apply or don't apply, that's your call, but you will need to do a feasibility study of some such to be coming in to the mission grants. So, and this is what I'm going to the next slide here. So the mission grants, maximum grant size is $10 million, but we do expect people to be in the order of $1 to $4 million. But we have a total amount of $40 million all up. As you can see, we're looking for around about 10 projects to really fund here. If it was 20, that would be fantastic, and even more would be great as well. But 10 would be our minimum expectation. What we expect to apply for a mission grant, we want people to have a feasibility study done and assessed by a panel that is set up by yourselves. We also want demonstratable commercial potential and or investor support. So if you have investor support, this would be fantastic at this point after doing the feasibility study coming into this. We also want to see strong teaming with experience. Now, I will focus on this. Strong teaming is vital to a good space project. Generally, in most industries, no one has all capability in-house, so you must team. And people with experience or companies with experience is highly vital to the success of your program. And at the very end, we want to see projects that are either going to be flying in space or directly supporting space assets. And what I mean by this is that don't propose projects that are being tested on the ground and then they could fly, but we never fly them. We want you to get that flight. We want you to be operating in space. Now, if you're something like a ground segment, for me, this is important that you'll be connecting to something in space by the end. So it's operating. And so that means you'll need to partner up with someone who is operating something in space or is aiming to put something in space as well. So that's enough from me. I'll be passing it off to Frank now, who will be going through all the details of the feasibility grants. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Campbell. Hi, everyone. My name is Frank Gallagher. And as Campbell said, I'm just going to take you through some of the detail for the Demonstrator Feasibility grant. So the program opened, the feasibility grants opened for applications on the 3rd of November. And will stay open until the 22nd of December this year. As Campbell explained, there's $3.7 million available for this, with a minimum grant of $50,000 and a maximum grant of $200,000. We are expecting a co-contribution of $50,000 as part of this, but wages are included in this. For more detail about what is considered, please have a look at the guidelines on the page, which there'll be a link to later in the slides. So in terms of who can apply and eligible applicants, you can see a list there on the left. So generally, we expect that you would be a company or a publicly funded research organization. On top of this, we would expect that you have activities already defined, feasibility activities already defined for your space project, with a pathway to clear pathway to commercialization. In terms of ineligible applicants, the focus there is that individual partnerships, trusts, Commonwealth, state, territory, or local government bodies are not eligible, as well as corporate or non-corporate Commonwealth entities. But as Campbell said earlier, teaming between industry and research is highly encouraged. So on the left, we have a list of what we'd consider eligible activities under the feasibility grant, and on the right, a list of ineligible activities. So the focus of the eligible activities is focusing on those pre-phase A to phase B activities determining the feasibility of your concepts in preparation for the later phase C to F of the mission development lifecycle. In terms of ineligible activities, the focus is primarily on this fundamentally is not a it's not a research program. It's focused on commercialization. So the focus will be on projects that aren't one-off science or research projects that don't have a clear commercialization pathway. In addition to this, any activities that don't directly support the space project, business as usual activities, will not be considered eligible. So from left to right, I've got a few examples of what we would consider example activities for the feasibility grants. So mission development through a concurrent design facility is something that would be an eligible activity. Technical feasibility studies, so it's that pre-phase A through to phase B, concept reviews, and finally there, prototyping and design development, potentially using data-driven systems engineering tools. This grant would be eligible for funding for this. So in terms of key assessment criteria, the focus here is that we want to ensure that your project aligns with the objectives of the Moon to Mars initiative, that what you're doing and what you plan on doing as part of your project in terms of feasibility activities, but also your planned phases C to F are feasible. The third one being focusing on your capacity, capability, and resources to undertake both the feasibility activities as well as the later mission development activities and ultimately deliver that space project. And finally, the impact of that grant funding, whether or not you require it for your project. So demonstrating project feasibility within the demonstrator program timeframe will be very critical. So in terms of some expected timeframes, we have timelines for your assessment of applications. We expect that once you have applied, we won't be hearing we expect that you will hear back from us on your applications around about April 2021, with the end of grant commitment being June 2022. In terms of the mission grant timelines, we're expecting that the mission grants will be released in late 2021 or early 2022, with the funding starting for this in mid-2022. So, although the mission grants will have the largest amount of funding, we want to keep this image in mind, as the feasibility grants are focused on providing that first stepping stone for you to get to the mission grants. So, as Campbell outlined, you don't need to apply for a feasibility grant if you feel like you don't need to. However, there is a certain level of expectation of the work that has already been done for you to be eligible for a mission grant. However, it is not required. In terms of next steps, we have a second demonstrator webinar next week on the 17th of November, and this will have a range of presenters from across Australia who will be giving an overview of the facilities available, which you could possibly use as part of your feasibility grants or even your mission grants, facilities that will help that mission development, but also a number of presenters who will talk around the regulatory aspects that you may need to consider as part of your space project. The SmartSat CRC are also holding a webinar in December, which will be covering some of the aspects around mission design, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, so the feasibility grants are open now, and they close on the 22nd of December. So make sure you apply now if you want to make sure that your application is seen. Just as a side note, Campbell's already mentioned, but supply chain capability grants second intake will be closing 17th of December. So if you are interested in that, make sure you get your application in early and go to our website with the Moon to Mars initiative to understand a bit more about that. In terms of more information and resources, so we have a web page at business.gov.au for the demonstrator feasibility grants for you to apply, but that web page also includes a number of various things that will help So if your questions aren't answered today, there is an FAQ list, and as well as a number of, and there are also the guidelines which you can read in depth and understand a little bit more, as well as some templates for budgets and letters. If you want to find out more about the Moon to Mars program and the Australian Civil Space Strategy, in order to inform your application a little bit better, if you go to our website, space.gov.au, you'll be able to find everything that you need there. If your questions aren't answered today or in the FAQs on the Business Grants Hub webpage, there is a call centre, and the number is just down there at the bottom right, which is 132846. So I think that brings us to the end of the feasibility grants presentation. I believe we're now going to move on to some questions which you posed during the presentation. So I'm just going to hand back over to Cynthia, who will now pose those questions to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. I've got a number of questions here, starting with regarding demonstrable commercial potential. Is market research enough to do, or do you expect specific outcomes to be identified with a business plan in place? Campbell?
Maybe this is best that I ask it. So I think this is how I understand it, is for the feasibility study per se. There are many attributes that you really want to do at this point. Just doing a market study would, for me, not be considered enough, but please refer to the assessment criteria and how you're being assessed. The key here is that you should be doing the range of activities that are needed to really de-risk a project. And that comes from programmatic, it comes from technical, it comes from financial. So it's all three of these activities which is important, and that's what you will ultimately be assessed on. So I hope I answered that question.
Okay, we've got another question that says, will new companies with well-qualified personnel be disadvantaged in the proposal assessment if they don't have established business operations in that company?
Eleanor, is this best for you to answer?
Hi, sorry, just trying to figure out how to unmute myself. So I work in the delivery area that's responsible for delivering the grants on behalf of the agency. The assessment will look at the capacity and capability of the team. If it's a newly formed company, your response to that particular criterion really needs to demonstrate how your new team will have that capability capacity. And I guess it's always a challenge if you don't have runs on the board, but those that team that you brought together may have runs from previous work that they've done. So you should pull that out in your response.
Can you confirm that all IP background and project belong to the grantee?
Could you rephrase, could you re-ask that question again? I didn't completely understand it, Cynthia.
So they've basically asked whether, how do you go about confirming that all IP belong to the grantee?
I mean, at the moment, this is a feasibility study. So we are aiming to ensure that the people are in the team, that the IP is obviously held by these groups. So the key aspect here is to ensure that the feasibility study, that the capabilities within the group. But of course, in the future work, so for the mission grants, it will be very difficult to explain how you're going to be commercially viable if the IP is not held by the individuals who are going to set up the commercial plan. So at the moment, Eleonora, did you want to add anything from this, from the assessment point of view, or?
Obviously there needs to be controlled IP as part of your application. I would think to be competitive. I'm wondering if the person is actually asking whether the Commonwealth wants to own the IP. And so I'm just looking to our grant agreement. I strongly advise you to review the sample grant agreement that's at business.gov.au. we might just have to take that one on notice, because I can't quickly find that part of the agreement. But the government doesn't want to own your IP. There may be a part that we want to license to, but we'll come back with an FAQ on that.
Okay, Campbell, can you give us an example of a mission that you consider supports the Moon to Mars goals?
So this is a common question we actually get quite regularly, and then it's understandable. So, you know, in the agency, we are continuously working to bring out the roadmaps and to bring out further areas that are here. But the key aspect is here is that we don't expect that the product you're generating is going to be on Orion, you know, through this program. That's not the case. What we are expecting is that we can, you need to make the case that we can use this for exploration or Moon to Mars activities in the future. So if you can't make this case, then it's going to be hard to explain how you are linked to it. But at the same time, if you can make this case, then it's good. So basically, from my side, it's important to say how you can be used in future exploration missions. So the good thing is here is that obviously exploration missions are quite broad, and so there can be a lot of things that are linked from it. But this is the point, is that we're meant to be pulling out the capability that you have to start bringing that towards each other, and then we'll start focusing it as well with Trailblazer when the information comes out. So I hope I answered that question. But the key aspect is you need to demonstrate to us how you can be used in future exploration missions. It doesn't have to be an exploration mission this time around. So, but I say this as well, just because it's a demonstrator program doesn't mean you can't put something on the Moon this time around. There are programs to do that. So there are slots to get yourself on the Moon. If you wanted to put something on the Moon through the demonstrator program, it's completely viable. But of course, if you want to just go into LEO or MEO or GEO, that's fine as well. This is not going to hold you back. So not everything is expected to go to the Moon, but of course, if you want to, it's fine. If you don't want to, it's also not a problem either. We understand you've got to get, there's got to be steps, and LEO makes a very early step, which is an important one to get.
Okay. Another question, in the case of an Australian subsidiary of an international company applies for the grant, how much of that grant, needs to go towards Australia? 100%?
So we have not put a limit on this per se, but through the assessment criteria, you will be assessed on the benefit to Australia. So, yes, so we understand that some things have to go offshore. There's no misunderstanding on that, especially things, certain segments of the mission profile, certain segments can go offshore, of course. But of course, we'll be assessing you on the benefit to Australia. If we saw all this money go offshore, then the chances of passing the assessment criteria, I believe, will be quite low. But of course, you know, if majority is kept in Australia, then you'll be ranking quite high on the assessment criteria relating to that area. So.
Okay. And can research organisations apply for feasibility grants?
Thank you, want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So, sorry.
I'll jump in while Frank's having some technical difficulties. Short answer is yes. So the eligible companies and also research institutions can apply. Universities, they all can apply. The only entities that I think is the big one that people notice can't apply are government organisations, so government bodies. But please, as I said, refer to the eligibility criteria inside the guidelines, and this will explain in detail what it is. And if you have any further questions, please also ask on the FAQs or ring up business.gov.au. But just a little word of warning on this. You'll probably notice from the assessment criteria, it's quite commercially focused. So a university, of course, can apply and lead the grant, but if it's highly focused on tech push without any commercial viability, you'll notice that the assessment criteria is geared up to ensure that we do have some commercial viability. So in any situation like this, I would highly recommend, I cannot emphasize this enough, but I would highly recommend to partner and team. through all of this. But we'll assess you according to the assessment criteria, but partnerships and teaming is by far a good way to improve, to rank higher in the assessment criteria.
Okay, can an organisation apply for the grant for 2 separate projects? If so, is it possible for one organisation to be awarded 2 grants? Eleanor.
Hi, yes, there's no limit on application or the number of applications that one organisation can submit, and it's absolutely the possibility that if they submitted 2 competitive applications that they could receive 2 grants. I mean, I would strongly recommend that if you're an organisation focused on the project that you really think is going to be competitive, rather than sort of spreading stuff in across multiple applications, but that's absolutely a decision for applicants.
Okay.
I'll just come back on that IP question as well. I've got an answer for that now. So the grantee will absolutely hold ownership of IP if that's what they already do. They will need to provide a license to the Commonwealth to use that. Now, this is a standard clause that we have in all of our grant agreements, and we don't want to commercialise or do anything particularly with that IP. It's just something that we have. And I guess if you have a real issue with that, that's something you need to consider when you are.
Okay. Are components for prototype rocket engines likely to receive funding, considering the development timeframe may be longer than phase D onwards allows? Campbell?
So this is during the launch question. So the key aspect here is that all companies can apply, but we will assess you to the assessment criteria, and we are expecting you to have something that is going to be in space. It is designed to be in space by the end of the 5-year program. So we would be expecting something to be up in that time frame. So I can't say if rocket engines are or are not included. It's just purely based on the assessment. But if it's going to be a 15-year time frame, then this will be quite difficult to argue the case why you'll be receiving emission grants when those come out from this side. So there is a time frame limit here, of course.
Okay. Can a mission that is being proposed for a feasibility study involve other space agencies? I already collaborate with other space agencies in other countries.
Frank, do you want to answer that one?
Yep, sure thing, Carol. Collaboration with other space agencies is perfectly okay as part of the the space age as part of your project. Again, I guess it relates closely to the point that Campbell made earlier that the project will need to show its benefit to Australia, but I mean, provided that it does that, there's no issue with it there being a link to a space agency overseas. Okay.
I think we've answered this question, but I'll ask it again. Regarding demonstrable, I think commercial potential, is market research enough or do you expect specific customers to be identified with a business plan in place? I think we answered that question, didn't we?
I probably didn't answer it very well. So it depends a little bit on the capability of the industry and what was going on. Ideally, for us, we would want to see revenue coming at the end of all this, ideally. Yeah. So we will assess in some sense where, the top people who have got that will be the ones who have a much higher chance of being funded. So for sure, when it comes down to, it depends on the capability of the industry. We don't want to push the industry too hard too quickly, but at the same time, if people do have, customers coming, investors flowing, and all of this sort of stuff, then you've got a much better case when it comes to getting funding. So I would ultimately myself, I would focus on trying to get this. But just remember, when a feasibility grant is given off, you do have 9 months to a year with a feasibility grant to do it, which is depending on what you're going to do, it's quite a decent amount of time, and it gives you the capability of going to investors and showing people that you do have this. So I'll put it in a broader sense. If you take just the feasibility grant and just work on the technical side of things, I think you're not probably pushing the feasibility grant to its fullest.
Okay. All right, conscious of time, the last question is, if an eligible organisation applies, partnered with a non-eligible company, would that be okay? Would it be okay for the non-eligible company to cover the minimum co-contribution?
Shall I take this one?
Probably good.
So you need to provide a minimum of $56,000 cash to be eligible under this program. We don't mind if that comes from the applicant or a partner or a mix of the applicant and a partner or multiple partners. So that's fine. I guess if you're applying and we want to see that the applicant is going to lead the project. We don't want to see a case where an eligible entity is being used just to apply to meet that eligibility requirement. It'll probably become obvious to the committee when we look at the assessment that's the case. So yeah, we want to see the lead applicant leading the project, but we don't mind where cash comes in. Just related to that, before we sign off, I know we're finishing up, but there's a question about in-kind contributions. So the in-kind can't go towards that 50%, or that $50,000 that you need to provide. It must be cash. If you include in-kind, that's fine. That can't cover eligible expenditure. And goes to the merit of your application. It's, what sort of other things are you looking for the grant leverage, and it's an into the project, but it can't go towards that $50,000 cash.
Okay. Thanks, Eleonora.
There's just one question here, Cynthia. I just see, just to make sure that we do have this, is like, when do the mission grants open? You've noticed on one of the first slides, we said it will open between late next year, 2021, early 2022. So the funding will start 2022 for this. The aim would be is that you should have your applications in early 2022, so we can obviously give the money off mid-2022. So that would be the key, is that you should be trying to get this in line early 2022, but just to be safe, make it very end of 2021.
Okay. Thanks, Campbell. Okay. Well, I think we've come to the end of this webinar, but I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. We look forward to receiving your applications and working with you to grow the Australian space sector or space industry. Further information is available now from business.gov.au or by calling the grant hotline on 132846 for all your unanswered questions. A recording of the presentation will be available on YouTube and our social media pages as well. Thank you once again for coming today, and good luck with your application. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.